Hey, Lovey. Hi. You are muted. Let's see. Lighting is always a problem. There we go. Hey, Jay.
Hey,
How are you?
good. How are you?
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Lovey.
Finishing dinner.
Okay. Is it good?
Dessert.
Oh, well, that sounds good.
Is everybody coming tomorrow night? No.
What's tomorrow night?
Volunteer.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't gonna go, but you gonna
You're not
go?
gonna go?
I wasn't going to. I did that last year. It was a fine event, but not something to repeat on an annual basis. Dave Cardinal, welcome. Dave, since we haven't started the meeting, but you're the only one from the public there. So I was sort of strict last time in the meeting about when we would allow people from the public to speak. And it really wasn't directed at you. It's the problem is that there are sometimes people, and you may know some of this, you may have witnessed this, but people who just interject their thoughts at every juncture, and most of it's completely irrelevant. And so that's why I just opted for the uh, sort of the tried and true. We talk about a topic first, and then we open it up to the public. But I don't feel too strict about that, except that, if we have
Yeah,
people on the phone who are problematic, then we've got to do something.
I totally understand, and we are going to the volunteer appreciation party tomorrow night for what it's worth.
Oh,
So
great. All right. All right. So we have 4 members of the committee, which constitutes a quorum. We don't even have to have a quorum to start, but we do to vote on anything. I think our votes are pretty infrequent these days, but let's get started. Now we have Anita. Maybe we can give people another minute, and since they're still joining, Ronnie. Now we have everybody except Leslie, I think. Okay, why don't we start? So on the agenda or a roll call, I think for the committee, everyone is there presently except for Leslie. Um, oral communication. So this is really for anybody. I mean, because we're no longer a committee subject to the Brown Act, we can really talk about topics, even if they're not on the agenda, but we could also put them into this open time. So has anybody got a topic that's a news item or other topic that doesn't really fit in the agenda items that they might want to speak to now? Dave Cardinal, go for it.
yeah, Sure. I have a topic that I honestly never thought I'd be talking about. Um, but it came up in the housing element that when Jim and Patty White are building their affordable housing complex, they're required by law that is related to sustainability to have a gray water management system, which seems to make perfect sense to me. Except that West Bay Sanitation will not actually allow them to connect the sewer because it changes the viscosity, basically, because they're only going to give them sludge and not water. And they're literally stuck and might have to stop development in a month because they've been unable to get help from the town or anyone else to sort that out. So, from a sustainability point of view, this might be one of the first, like Alpine Hills, we did gray water, but we were already connected. But anybody new that wants to do development in gray water, it sounds to me like it doesn't work. So it's totally off topic, and that I never even thought about it until last week, but something that I think is an issue worth thinking about going forward. So thanks.
So I actually have some information about that. I'm on the sewer in Portola Valley, and West Bay Sanitary, some workers were out at my property yesterday and today, and I talked to them about this gray water problem. And the worker had a completely different understanding of what gray water was. He's under the impression that it's a system where you're taking the gray water or all the water out of the house into some type of container that processes it all and then sends the solids into the sewer. And I tried to explain to him, no, it's not that at all. We're not doing anything with the toilet. And actually not the kitchen either. All it is bathroom, showers and sinks and laundry. And, if all my house had was a kitchen and a toilet, a bathroom, there would be no problem with viscosity. Toilets are designed to handle whatever it is now, 0.8 gallons per flush, because the engineers have determined that that's adequate to move solids along through a plumbing system. So West Bay has got some crazy stuff going on there. But the good thing about it is, and I've been a little busy this week, is that the guy gave me the direct emails for 2 of the engineers at West Bay. So when I come up for air, I was going to send an email to them to find out about the reality of what they are envisioning is a gray water system. But I do have to say that, it was never considered when we put the gray water system to the whole regulations and whatever together. It was really considered for big single family homes that wanted that, that we wanted the water to be going out into the landscape so that they could have a lawn and their plants could survive a drought. And that's what it was designed for. In the context for Jim White's situation, when he has these little 500 square foot units, it's a little complex. I can see him putting it on he's got a laundry room with many machines. I could see it going a laundry landscape kind of system. That would be really easy to set up. But for these little 500 square foot houses, it's definitely an added cost that may not have adequate benefits. I don't know. And then I personally had a problem from the very beginning with the idea of requiring homes to put in a gray water system that required filtration and pumps. To me, it's just insane to require that. So, Brandy insisted on having that in there. But for me, if you're going to have to pump water uphill it makes no sense, with water being, less than a cent a gallon, and you're spending thousands of dollars for this system, and then you have to go through the trouble of actually cleaning those filters. And that is one of the most disgusting, horrible situations that nobody will ever want to handle. I mean, never. It's like never. So the fact that we have this in there forcing people to at least put a stub out and put electricity down at where it exits the house, to me, that's insane. So, yes, it's fine. It's great. A laundry landscape that shoots out down the hill into where you want it. Great system. I have one, works beautifully. But if you have to go to a system with there's pumps and filters, no. I mean, because the reality now is West Bay has got their own big monster system. So whatever water we're sending out through our sewer systems, they are collecting it, they are processing it, and then they are selling it on to Menlo Country Club. So it's already being processed and taken care of. So there's no reason to now, which is probably part of why West Bay is putting a stink about this, because they don't want any sewer water, any water being taken out of their gray water system that they sell on to West Bay. So just to sell on to Menlo, that it just occurred to me, that's the real reason. They don't want to divert their thing because they need to pay for their huge system they put up at the corner of Sand Hill Road. So that's the reality. So we need to rethink that for sure.
Is there anything that, I mean, not to be specific to Jim and Patty per se, but what would that mean? I mean, he's talking about stopping development on the project in a month. And obviously, it's a month. He's not going to go bankrupt or whatever, but it's kind of sad if this is the reason. So is there a way to sort that out maybe, or?
I don't know, but I'm meeting with Adrian tomorrow for this meeting for the planning commission. So I can just ask her if there's any kind of out, if they could put a waiver on the system, given that the whole point of the gray water system is to allow the water to go back into the soil, and it's happening, but it's happening over at the country club, not and in Portola Valley, but it's still recharging our, what do you call them? Our aquifers. So it's, it's still accomplishing what we want it to be doing. So by using their system. So yeah, when we started this, of course, West Bay didn't have any of that. So it was a different situation, and they're not putting in lawns over there, so they don't need the extra water. So it was really put in place as a, if somebody wanted a big old massive lawn, then this would allow them to do that, because they would be feeding the lawn through gray water, which is a good use of it for it.
Yeah, and it's great at Alpine because we have tennis courts that have to get washed sometimes. So, it's a big water sink, if you will, and whatever.
Really? They're using gray water? They're not supposed to be using gray water for.
All right. Let me not speak to that. I don't know.
They better not be using gray water for hard surfaces.
Okay,
they're not supposed to use it. They're not supposed to use it on like sprinkler systems where it gets sent into the air. It's purely the only way to use gray water is to keep it underground. So if it feeds a lawn, you have to feed it subsurface, or if you feed a plant, you have to feed it into a trench around the plant. It definitely isn't. It cannot be become aerosoled or whatever, because there might be some sort of things in there. So.
Okay, I'm sure. I just know that we were required to put one in, and all the Southern California tennis facilities have them in there to water the clay courts, and it sounded like a good idea, but no, I'm sure it's not going to the wrong place.
I mean, maybe they're filtering it. Maybe they put a big old system to filter it, which then it's fine. But
so if you talk to Adrian, and then how can we get a message to the homeowner or
I'll just email him. We've become buddy these last week.
Great, thanks. Other topics for this open portion of the meeting? If not, we can move on to the agenda. I don't think we have introductions, presentations, announcements, approval of the minutes. So the minutes of March 21st, are there any suggested changes or additions to the minutes? I don't think you've had a single change suggested to your minutes in years because you're so good at it, Rebecca.
I'm not convinced
No.
anybody's actually reading them very
That's not
thoroughly.
true. Lovey
I'm
wanted
sure
her
there's
name, her
typos.
name changed.
Oh yeah, Lovey wanted to be
Lovery's
Lovey.
name
That's
changed,
true.
yeah.
That's true. Any for this particular minutes, any suggested changes or additions? Is there a motion to approve?
I so move.
Second,
All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No. Okay. Minutes are approved. We'll go on to our business for tonight. So I put it all under old business because I think most of, basically all of it is stuff that we've talked about before. First item is public service announcements. We just had the water meter one go out on PV Forum, right, Rebecca?
Yep.
So what's up next? I mean, do we want to continue doing these public service announcements? And do we have ideas for what we might do in the coming months?
Well, I still think we need to do a why electrify, and I keep saying I'm going to work on that, and I have notes, but unfortunately, I haven't had time.
Dinner's ready.
Okay, I'm in my meeting.
Oh, no. You're gonna do about the food.
I don't know. Sorry, little interruption there.
All right. Why electrify? That sounds like a really good one. Anybody else feel motivated to work on that? Or other topics? Anybody got something they've been thinking about?
The other thing that people might find interesting is that I'm always hearing about really cool new building products. Like
Mhm.
I went to again the Passive House monthly thing, and they were talking about hempcrete. That's concrete that's made with hemp.
Hmm.
Somehow it's mixed in there, and then they have another one, the product I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's also made from hemp, and it's an insulation product, and you can get it as bats or as rigid. There was also a product that sounded really interesting. That's a lightweight rock. I forget what it's made out of, but it would, you could mix it in with concrete, or you could put it as under, when you pour a slab, you're required to put gravel. You could put this material, and it has insulative properties. So it would allow your slab to be protected from the ground and provide additional insulation around the slab. So if you're trying to air seal your whole house, this would help with that. So these kind of new technologies are coming around that, I know the Passive House people are already using them and familiar with them, but I don't know if others would be interested in that.
I absolutely, well, I am because I'm a geek, but I think that the biggest thing when we or you tout things would be to try and clarify whether they're actually approved under our current set of codes, because that's really, as you know, they're almost impossible to figure out. So if you can say, here are some cool new things that you can use in Portola Valley in these circumstances, to me, that would be 10 times more powerful than just, hey, look, these engineers invented a new kind of hempcrete, which sounds cool to me. But so that'd be my one filter on it, is the more we can do to make it targeted, like here's things you can use today, I think it would make it much more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, well, how do we want to think about public service announcements going forward? Just do them when somebody is so inspired, have an assignment list. Remember when we had an assignment each month? It's your turn, Ronnie, it's your turn, Anita, and then you have to come up with something, or what's the,
I don't think it's going to happen unless someone's assigned a
ah,
particular month.
so,
And I'm not I don't mean that we need to be real super strict that if you can't make it that week or whatever, you're in trouble. But I do think there should be a little bit of just a schedule with kind of
Schedule.
within the month, come up with something. It doesn't have to be long. It could just be a short garbage tip or a short reminder or what have
Mhm.
you.
We talked before also about repeating them. Like, so for instance, why electrify should probably be like every other month, um, versus, it's just such a high yield thing that people have questions about that's relevant to what a lot of people are doing directly. So I think there's certainly an opportunity to repeat too. And not just to check a box, but because these are important things that people could use the reminders of.
I mean, we could always put out every month what the greenhouse gas emissions are, what the CO2 level is. But that may be too much for the town.
So
I like
go ahead.
I like the idea of uh, uh, touting and elevating some of the new products. Not necessarily all building products, but the new green products that are being developed. A lot of them in Silicon Valley. I know I had mentioned a few months ago about Molly Wood's podcast, Everybody in the Pool, where she has been interviewing CEOs, mostly of startups, green technology products, and many of them in the Bay Area.
Hmm.
But I haven't been able to figure out how to write it up so that it's interesting. But if some of those products, I mean, I could go back and look through them, and some of those products might be useful, and perhaps we could, as far as what you refer to, Rebecca, building products, they might be reasonable to mention to people. I wouldn't have the capacity, or I wouldn't be able to say whether or not they'd be approvable in Portola Valley, but I could at least find some of the more interesting ones. And maybe, maybe it's a list that we keep until we get a critical mass of things to post. Maybe it's not just one person, because that's a lot for somebody to do, is to come up with what you said. I think it is. So it would be a lot for me, but I could contribute maybe a couple suggestions.
Well, I think we're approaching these PSAs a little differently than we should be. I know the ones we've put out have been pretty long, longer than most people can handle for their attention span. And
Yeah.
I think when I look at what the wildfire people and the conservation people put out, that sometimes it's just a little paragraph. Today's weed of the month is whatever, blue star thistle, something like that. So even if the technology, I heard about 3 new cool building products that are coming online, boom, 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 and just, tiny little couple sentences with a link to the companies or new products, or, we talked about in the past, just giving people some of these podcasts and some of these links. I follow a couple people on Instagram that talk about really cool things that people are doing around the world. Just it's sort of uplifting. And I don't think we need to get stressed about writing an essay. I think it's really about just, you found something interesting and we just write a little paragraph and with a link and off it goes. I think just creating just more just excitement around sustainability is more important than having a big old essay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I'd like to riff off that more excitement around sustainability, because it really, you look at the flight night that we've had. I probably said this before some months ago, or, just the Nature and Science Committee, sometimes, with tours that they had, of just all the cool stuff they had. There are things, and the music festivals, right? You've got things that happen in town that people can join in on and regard as fun. Where can we put the fun into sustainability and get people excited about it, rather than, oh my God, the world is crashing and burning and I guess I should think about this? How do we get people engaged? When I teach, at my class, getting the students to talk with each other and get excited about ideas and know that this is their future, that works. But they're at an age and mindset, I think, where that can work. But how can we do that for the rest of us? I think it would be worth doing because we've got such a brilliant town, right? It's, you know, so many inventors, so many ideas, so much passion about environment here. When you get people, you know, pitching in to dredge out the frog pond or whatever it is they do there, or, you know, daylighting the creek and planting, you know, native plants there, that gets people excited and they get to know each other better and all that. You know, the hikes that are going on now on the trails is lovely too. How can we get some of that into sustainability? And am I the only person who thinks that might be a good idea?
I mean, I think it's just the little messages that go out very frequently. I mean, I don't think anybody has the capacity to put on an event anytime soon. And given the, unfortunately, what happens at these larger events like the picnic, where there's, you know, we've got 10 people preaching, we're preaching to the choir to the 10 people, 15 people that show up every time to get the freebies. I mean, it's just, we're not getting the message across. So I don't know. Unless we did something with kids.
Yeah, I think
This is good.
Leslie's idea is really cool. I have no idea how to implement it, but as a
Nor do I.
wacko version, yeah, of it would be, you know, okay, we're going to spend 10 to 2 on Saturday taking all the tires that Ron Ramey's was going to dump and teach kids and adults how to turn them into sandals. Or, I mean, that's totally made up. But if we could imagine, you know, or floor mats or
the flip-flop art. Have you seen some of that amazing art that they do in
Yeah.
Africa with flip-flops? Yeah.
Wow.
just thinking that connecting, speaking of kids and the frog pond and draining things. And I've worked with like the, you know, out in the Baylands where the kids are happy to do this and that. You know, if there's a connection and there are probably people who actually know how to do this, I hope. So that would be a thing. Obviously, it takes work, and maybe we're not prepared to do it. But that might be an idea, something that people get involved with and see something interesting about the sustainability chain for good or bad. That goes, you know, from, you know, it was on your car yesterday and now it's on your shoe today, or is that good or bad? I don't know. Just that'd be my thought.
I think that's a great one. I tend to think also that just given everybody's time commitments, pulling off events is just really challenging. And so I wonder if we could just, you know, if 2 or 3 of us put out some small thing in the next month, you know, just anything we've come across that we find interesting, something that inspired us. It sounds like we're all being exposed to those things. It's just maybe sort of downscaling the expectation for, you know, lengthy essays and lots of data would be a reasonable way to go to allow us to continue to put things out with less overhead. Does that appeal? Is that, yeah?
I mean, we had done in the past, though I wasn't involved with it, was the movie night. But again, it's only in the winter months because of the lighting issue in the MUR, or the whatever it is, multipurpose room. So it would be like a November, December, January, February type events only, but something to think about for the next well, not year, but the next whatever financial year, depending on our budget, right? Are we supposed to be coming up with a budget?
There's been no request for a budget. And I think it's the town staff. I mean, we're gonna have to rely on them to set the timing for all that, which, you know, given all their pressing matters, who knows what's gonna happen, but yeah, Leslie?
That trivia night that happened recently, was a blast. And, various neighborhoods formed teams and things. And I don't think it cost much. And it was just, don't think it had to be any particular time of year. And if we made a trivia night, I mean, and it was about all kinds of random trivia, if we made it about climate and had a couple bottles of wine around too, like which they had as part of this trivia night, that could be a joyous educational little occasion that doesn't cost.
Well, it costs a lot in time. You should talk to Karen Askey about how many
Ah.
hours you put into that, because.
Okay, so you need a couple of really truly dedicated volunteers then.
Oh, I think
All
it was
right.
more than a couple. I think it was that
Okay.
whole team that was involved in that. So it was pretty immense. I mean, she was
Okay,
advertising it for a couple months in advance, and
Um,
so, yeah.
absolutely, but I will say, I talked to Karen yesterday and today, and she are looking for another thing to do besides that. So we talked about bingo. They were talking about casino nights, which are super expensive. So we're talking about bingo or Stanford Sierra Camp Disco Bingo, or I think if there was a variation on the trivia night, which obviously was really well received, that played out, that made sense. They are looking. They think it was a great thing, and they'd like to do more.
It could all be about sustainability,
Sure.
quizzes on, yeah.
We could
That's
provide the questions to them.
Climate
some of them.
catastrophe game show.
You might need a little more alcohol for that one.
How does that work?
I don't know. Okay, so we've got ideas for some events, which sound really interesting. We've also got the notion of recycling some of reusing some of the PSAs we've used in the past. I think it would be great for somebody to just take a look at all the PSAs that we've sent out in the past and decide whether any of them warrant redistribution. Is anybody willing to sign up for that?
And I would say not necessarily redistribute the whole thing, but just take a tip out of it, like our green waste one.
Perfect.
Just take a couple of tips or 3 tips from that. Reminder. This is what we learned. Here's three things to take home and to remember.
At one point, Scott, weren't you gonna do the like index, like send out an index of all the ones that we've done with pointers?
I might have said I would do that. Yeah, there was an attempt to consolidate all of them on the website, right? I just think that's probably fallen apart because of the staffing issue, but I'd be happy to I'd be happy to put them, I'll do that. I'll put them all together. And then if maybe we could just say 2 or 3 of us are going to mine that this month for a few little tidbits of things that we think should be restated on PV Forum, and then several other people could do it the next month. I mean, it would be easy, right? It's just recycling of really valuable information that people may have missed. So yes, I will put a consolidated tips document together. Would it make sense for 2 or 3 or 2 people maybe each month to look through that and just pick something that they think is a good one to put back out in perhaps shorter form?
What I was thinking would be useful is just send that out as an email. Like these are like the 10 or however many tips we've sent out, like 1 sentence description or whatever with a link to it.
Well, it depends whether the Carrie, is she still with us, or is there a new person now at Town Center? If they can actually
just send
add
it on
them to the
PV.
website in one section. If they're not there
We don't
already.
need that though, right? We could just send a pointer to the email, to the PV Forum email.
So Ronnie, you're suggesting that we send out on PV Forum an email with the entire list of tips and links to them. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah.
I see. As opposed to taking little snippets and sprinkling each month with snippets of them.
Well, I think you can do them both.
You could do
You can
both.
Do both. Okay. Okay. Well, okay. So I'll work on that. I can create an email which lists all the tips and has a link to them. Then we can send that out for this month. And then in subsequent months, we can take turns mining that for, for additional things or shorter things. Is that reasonable?
Did you also want us to suggest new things that we might come upon? Because we're-
Absolutely. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
just send those out to see if they'd be acceptable and then turn them into,
Absolutely.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You want a recommendation to climate writers? There's one incredibly talented one in Maine. Has a nice thing called the Weekly Anthropocene on Substack that is just well worth the read. I mean, do you want suggestions like
that would be something you could send out on, or we could send out on PV Forum, is that, there's this amazing source of material that people could be checking out.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And actually I popped onto the website and we do have all the tips are from November 2023 to November 2022. They have them up there. I'll send you the link. So we can just send out the link to that page. The only thing is that I think we might ask right now, it's kind of hard to find because they have it under sustainability tips, and then they have the first article, which is Leslie's, and then you have to scroll through the entire thing before you get to the tips, the links to all the rest of the tips. So it seems that we kind of need a little bit of a rearrangement on that page so that the links to all the tips are first, and then you can go to the articles.
Okay. Jay, you haven't really said much. What do you think of these ideas?
Yeah, that sounds good. And I can do one on kind of talking to your doctor about sustainability in your treatment for whatever, because it's a real up and coming thing in healthcare. Healthcare is 8 to 10% of all greenhouse gases in the United States. And there's one of the big barriers to more sustainability in healthcare. Well, there are many, but one of them is that there's not a lot of push from patients, right? And that patients don't come into the office in pain requesting low carbon care. So the idea that this is an issue and that it's a good idea to talk to your doctor and see what they're doing about it.
What are they doing about it?
Well, some people are doing absolutely nothing, right? And so it's a good idea to ask those folks so they get some motivation. But then there are loads of things. There's local sourcing versus sourcing far away. A big issue is reprocessing of materials that are reusable versus throwing them out. Getting regular old reusable versus disposable materials anyway. All anesthetic gases are very potent greenhouse gases, up to 6,000 times as potent as CO2. Surgery in general is very, very resource intensive. There's literally no data whatsoever for like pardon me, my puppy's making noise. Like life cycle assessment for medical implants. It doesn't exist. There's no data at all. And it's probably a colossal number if you look at the indicators of it. So it's really in its infancy compared to something like building an automobile or building a home, because healthcare has always gotten a pass, right? Because we just want grandma to get better. We don't care, do whatever you need to do, doc, right? That's the path that healthcare gets, and it's finally getting to the point where people are looking at some of these things.
Great. Sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Jay, have you heard
Yeah.
of Cabinet? It's
No.
supposedly a pharmacy. Well, it is a pharmacy where they send you prescriptions in glass bottles, and then the refills are in pouches, compostable pouches.
Really?
Really compostable. But anyway, and then it's what we all want, is to be able to have
Yeah.
refill a glass bottle. Ted's looking into it. He's I know they do over the counter drugs, and he's trying to get his heart meds through
Yeah.
through them, and he's having a little bit of an issue. But if he's successful, I'll report back. We have a friend, do you know Brenda Harrington? Anybody? She's the one who passed this on to us, and she's been getting some things through Cabinet. So I mean, I don't know how yeah, I'm sure it
Wow.
adds costs somehow, and you know, the insurance companies might rebel, but anyway, it's a start, and it would, you know, eliminate theoretically
Yeah.
any costs.
This is like what I do with my job, but it's such a hard thing to say one thing is better than the other. And I've developed a good relationship with kind of one of the top life cycle assessment people in healthcare. She's over at NYU, and she always says, and it's such an insightful answer when you say, "Oh, is this better or is that better?" And her answer is always, "It depends." You know, and so, for example, they did this great, you know, they've done the study a million times on, is a reusable surgical gown better or a disposable surgical gown better? Well, it depends on how far the gown came from and where you get your electricity and where it was made and what it's made out of and all these things. So literally, if you're in Australia, disposable one's better. And if you're in California, a reusable one is better, unless you care about water, unless it's a drought year, and then the other one becomes better. So all these things are so hard to figure out. But in the case of what I always tell people is that, well, if you don't know, then less is the better answer. So, for instance, I get all kinds of people who are right on the borderline of, do you need surgery or do you not need surgery? And they're like, should I do it? Should I not do it? And I say, well, don't do it. If it's really 50-50 to you and you don't care and all things are equal, then we can say, don't do it, because the carbon footprint of any surgery is enormous.
Okay, well, it sounds like we have some ideas here that could generate additional PSAs. So maybe we should go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. The climate action plan, I guess it's maybe reporting back to people, Ronnie, on what we've done and what's happened or not happened. You want to do that?
Yeah, well, so I just reached out to Sharif, asking him what we could do. Yeah, and at first I didn't hear back. He was actually away from the office for a while, but then I pinged him and I just heard back this week, and he said, I'll just read it. Yes, I think the group could certainly help, but we want to make sure that your time is meaningful and not duplicated. I'm checking with Corey and I'll let you know this week where we think you and the committee may help. And we haven't heard back yet after that.
Who is Corey? Do we know?
She's the assistant town
Town
manager.
manager.
Oh, okay. Has there been the replacement for Laura Russell yet or not?
Yes.
There is, yes.
There is. Okay.
Starting on Monday, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Monday.
Yeah.
Big progress. And then I would assume the Brandy position hasn't been filled, so. Okay. Okay, good. The next one was the HEA Home Energy Analytics insert for the Green Waste newsletter. I don't know whether we want to, did we ever get anything from James?
I did not, and I just sort of decided to stop pinging him about it.
Okay, so maybe we have to drop that one if they're not motivated enough to provide us with copy. Unless we know, do we know anybody else at that organization that we could approach?
I mean, if it's benefiting them and they're not driving it, then I think we just need to
Drop
let it go.
Yeah.
Because they
He
get
seems to
their,
be the one. I know that like Brandy had been in touch with him before.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
actually, when I went through the program, I think he was actually he was actually the person who was sort of was the energy advisor. So it might be a one-man kind of company. I don't
no,
know.
it's Steve Schmidt is the owner.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's just him and James, but it's possible.
Okay. Next, all electric ordinances. There were some emails that people were exchanging about the requirement for all electric buildings and the legal challenges that have resulted, and then some of the alternative approaches that are being taken. And it'd be good to just talk about that and maybe somebody could summarize for the group what's been happening and what Portola Valley is planning to do.
Yeah, I think this is what I had sent out, right?
Yeah.
I could, I pulled it up so I could just go through the summary that I had
Mhm.
sent out before.
Sure.
Should I try to share it or
Sure.
how do I do that here?
Um,
Share. There we go. Oops. Is that working?
mhm.
Um, yeah, so this was the summary. So we back in 2022 adopted REACH codes, which require new construction to be all electric. And a lot of other, towns and cities in California adopted those same REACH codes. After that, Berkeley had a court decision that they were illegal, basically. And that the court case, as far as I understood, revolved around a restaurant, I think, that was using gas for cooking. And I guess the federal laws are that along the lines of you're not allowed to prevent someone from using gas, or I forget the details. But then that was appealed, and then at the beginning of this year, the Ninth Circuit Court confirmed that decision. So in reaction to that, basically all of these cities that had adopted the REACH codes have stopped enforcing them. Palo Alto stopped enforcing them. San Mateo County stopped enforcing them. And then in this email thread that I forwarded, I asked Sharif what Portola Valley was doing. And I don't know if I prompted it, but then after that, we basically copied the San Mateo County thing. And so now up on our website, we are also no longer enforcing those codes. In the article about Palo Alto, it sounds basically it sounds like there's an alternative mechanism, which are called one margin REACH codes, which basically do not outright prohibit gas, but I think margin refers to like an efficiency standard essentially. And so they have very tight efficiency standards that in effect, you basically need to use electric to reach the efficiency standard. I mean, maybe with very efficient gas appliances, in some cases, you're also able to do it. And so that seems to be, an alternative that kind of works around the legal issues. So, this is all pretty recent, like over the past few months. I think Palo Alto, Menlo Park, like other cities and towns are basically investigating adopting these one margin REACH codes or maybe other alternatives. I'm not sure. And that's basically where we are. And it's kind of unclear so, it seems like it would be a good idea for us to investigate these and potentially adopt them. But in terms of what we need to do to push that forward, it basically seems like it'll be difficult to do without having a replacement. Oh, can you hear me? My internet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it seems, it's probably going to be difficult for us to make progress without having a planning director who's starting Monday, so that'll help. But then, also we probably need to replace.
Yeah, your audio is going in and out for me at least.
Yeah,
Oh.
you froze for a minute there.
Yeah, it said my internet was unstable. You can hear me now though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, it'll help to have the new planning director probably, but you know, it seems like we also will need a replacement for Brandy to, you know, give this all some more attention.
I have a question about.
I did raise this, you know, the town council had this goal setting session and I raised this as like, you know, something that we could potentially prioritize. And I don't know if they probably weren't that specific in their goals, but
Because the other thing
whatever.
to add to that is not just the electrification ordinances, but also the idea of putting more, or encouraging more, sustainable building processes. So making buildings more sustainable, because buildings are like 40% of greenhouse gas emissions. So if we can get people to do air sealing, to do more insulation, to do, you know, a couple inches of rigid on the outside of their buildings when they're building new homes or doing major remodels, then it just has an enormous impact on reducing the size of their equipment for HVACs and whatnot. So that dramatically reduces greenhouse gas emissions. And it also has tremendous benefits for the residents of that home because it's much more comfortable, much more quiet. You know, you don't have drafts and stuff, and, you know, you don't need much energy to keep it warm or to keep it cool. So it's, you know, it's a win-win situation, and it doesn't add that much to the cost.
Are
And
there
some of this
reach
is,
codes covering that? Do you know?
I think it's even, you know, it sort of gets incorporated into the new Cal Green things. There's a lot of things they have to do already that start to be that. It's not as strict as what I call the passive house standard, which is, you know, 10 times what the old Energy Star was. But, you know, thermal bridges, for example, eliminating thermal bridges. These sorts of things have dramatic impact on not just comfort, but also in the case of thermal bridges on the long-term function of the home, you know, because if you have a thermal bridge, that's an area where the moisture can get into the house because of the differential between you know, the heat and the cool. So you get condensation happening at these places where there's thermal bridges. So even just getting people to start checking for thermal bridges before they build, you know, these sort of things have dramatic, you know, their house all of a sudden will last 50 years instead of, you know, getting rotted out after 20 years. So in the long term, it's a big deal. But again, I think, you know, at the planning commission meeting, you know, we talked about the idea of revisiting not just these new zoning amendments, but just, you know, the whole way, our whole zoning code is full of bizarre things, and it's badly organized and it's difficult to use. And, you know, the town is finally talking about the idea of cleaning the whole thing up, you know, over the next year or so. So if the town's going to be committed to doing that, then I don't think they'll have time to commit to also you know, adding things to the building code as well. So we have to kind of think a little bit in terms of timing, but that doesn't mean that we can't start to, you know, collect information about what could be added to you know, what could supplement Cal Green requirements. So
I had one question, Ronnie. So the one margin reach codes, including strict energy efficiency standards, is it really energy efficiency or is it CO2 emissions impact, or what is what, you know, because yeah,
I don't recall. I mean, this was a quote. This was a quote from
in that article.
probably from this article.
Okay.
I mean, this is also a link to the actual codes. So
yeah, I'll take a look
yeah, I don't know
at
if I
it.
can quickly
Okay.
see, but
Yeah.
All
right. Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
can I make a quick comment on that? I think it's all wonderful, but realistically, we build essentially no new housing in terms of single family housing. There was one last year. We do a bunch of remodels, which obviously need to be upgraded. But I think the two major impacts going forward are going to be ADUs and hopefully some affordable multifamily housing. And one of the things they're looking for is a greater ability to do modular construction, which I'm curious actually, seems to me it's got to be way more energy efficient than having teams of carpenters and everybody come out on site and build everything custom. So I think those are way better, but they don't get any credit for that. So again, in terms of a macro sustainability issue, I would love to see us lower, remove the barriers to making efficient construction methodology possible here. Because right now, the custom construction cost, whether you turn your furnace on or not in your guest house, you spend $1 million on people coming out and pouring water and concrete and all that stuff. That's got to be a massive energy footprint before anybody swims in your pool or whatever. So I don't know. I think it'd be good to consider that.
Cal Green may have some numbers for modular because you're saving on waste because it's built in a factory. There's other efficiencies they have in there, and then they're able to put significant amount of insulation in there that's properly done. And so the Cal Green checklist might have some points for that. But I'm
Okay.
not an expert on Cal Green.
So do we want to move on at this point? Looks like the last thing on the agenda is, there was a request for anybody who's interested and willing to be part of a group that, rewrites the PV committee handbook. So, the obvious large thing that's changed is that many of the committees like ours are no longer Brown Act, committees. Anybody interested in doing that? I just thought I'd ask. I did send out an email, nobody responded, so that's probably that's probably the answer we get. But anybody interested?
No.
That would be no. Okay, fine. That's a clear no. All right. So that is the agenda for tonight. What do we want to talk about next time? More of the same? Any other topics that we want to consider?
I think we should think a little bit about, we keep bringing this up, but about somehow updating the website for the sustainability section.
Okay. I wonder, I mean, at one point in time, I think when Al Sill was involved, he and or others of you had access to the website and could make changes. That seems like a lot better approach given the staff shortage with the town. I don't know whether we're going to be able to get that level of control, but if we can't have that level of control, I'm not sure how much can get done right now. I guess I could check with Carrie.
No, it's definitely not an immediate thing, but
Mm-hmm. Okay. Other topics next time?
well,
Okay.
again, our PSAs, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will have sent out the consolidated PSA, so maybe we can have some discussion around which of those as separate items we might, send out again or extract some tidbits from.
Does somebody want to check with Karen Askey about coordinating, getting some things from the sustainability committee in terms of questions for an event or whatever,
For a trivia night and another
or
trivia.
whatever?
That would be fun. Yeah, I'd be happy to contact Karen for that. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay. Yeah. All right. If there are no other things to discuss, then I guess we're ready to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make one.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. All right. That's it. Take care. See you
Take
all.
care. Thank you all.
Good night.
Bye-bye.